Hey guys, Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks here. Welcome back. I think we got a great show for you today. So I've got a friend of mine, Konstantin Christoulakis. He helped me out with an article about copper a year or two ago, and since then he's been my go-to guy when it comes to metals and especially close into the mining and processing world. So he's here today to talk to us about the situation on the metal supply front, specifically copper. It's kind of been a crazy picture here lately. So he's going to help clear that up for us here in just a minute. Konstantin's joining us. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey guys, welcome back to Manufacturing Talks. I'm Jim Vinosky, your host. I'm very glad to be joined today by Konstantin Christoulakis. He is Senior Manager of Procurement and Risk for a metals trader, and he is here to talk about metals. So welcome, Konstantin.
Good to be here, Jim. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here with your esteemed audience to share some, the global picture in metals, maybe copper in particular, and how this relates to the average manufacturer out there. So very glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you here. And I already said it offline, but I'll say it here for everyone. Welcome back to America. Konstantin just returned to our country from some time over in Cyprus. So good to have you back on our shores.
Great to be back. Great to be back. Thank you for that.
And so you and I first got connected with the article I did about copper specifically a year or so ago. And I'm really glad to revisit this. And we'll talk broadly about metals, but that being a primary one, definitely want to drill into that. As we get ready to do that, why don't you just tell folks, your background, how you got doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, thanks for that. First of all, my story, I guess you could say, has two main chapters. One chapter being that even though I was born and raised in Athens, Greece, at 16, I went to the United States to a distant relative just to, do my senior year of high school, maybe finish my university there. I ended up staying 19 years, out of which I ended up having an enlistment with the U.S. Marines, where I developed my love, you could say, about a passion about supply chains, while at the same time getting the crazy blow up stuff out of my system, because initially I wanted to be a grunt, and God bless my recruiter. He's like, no, you don't want to be a grunt. Yeah. So I was fortunate to be exposed to supply chain and logistics. I kind of followed that with my education in Cal State Fullerton. Then I ended up getting recruited as a intern from Gap Inc. in their distribution center out in Fresno. Excellent experience. I ventured out to my entrepreneurial side, and I had a healthcare startup with one of my college professors in Fresno State University. I said Fulton before. And in 2010, I returned back to Europe. Personal reasons. My mother was not doing well with her health, and I ended up staying 14 years there. First, initially, I was in supply chain security for counter piracy, which is a hot topic again right now with the situation. Because the now that the hoodies are out, the pirates are coattailing, so to speak. And that's how I ended up in Cyprus from Greece, and did some very unique work for a third-party logistics provider that. One of the best 3PLs in Europe, I think. Right now, they're doing the humanitarian work for Gaza, taking the stuff over there. And we did a very interesting project for AliExpress, making Cyprus a hub for Israeli orders from AliExpress. And since 2019, out of nowhere, out of complete chance, you could say, I landed up in the amazing and exciting world of metals, copper in particular, working for what I consider one of the biggest global players in copper consumption. So I got to have the opportunity and the blessing to work with the best and the brightest and the biggest in the industry. And I guess when you do that, you have to kind of bring also your own A game. So I developed, while I always considered supply chains to be my passion, with procurement and distribution logistics that I had done, I feel like in metals, I found my calling. I find copper very important in particular, not just because it's my expertise, just because of where the story is heading in the next 20 to 30 years. And now back in the U.S., I'm married to my wife, Francesca. I have 2 kids. Our kids and my wife kind of had a hard time adjusting in Cyprus, so we decided to come back in the States. So right now, kind of wrapping things up with my current employer. I'm in discussions with trying to stay in metals and be closer to the mining side, if I can say. I think this is where it's going to get really interesting. Very, very quickly. I mean, it's already interesting.
Exactly.
So,
getting more so by the day, right?
It is, and I think it should be a wake up call. You've been very keen on your show to discuss energy and how important that is to manufacturers. And I think metals as being a raw material for many things out there is also of importance. So just like how manufacturers need to keep an eye on their ensuring their energy supply, it's similar with keeping an eye on the radar of where the global picture is in terms of metals.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Great point. Certainly it has been a focus at times. I certainly have concentrated on the energy front, it being so topical right now, but underlying all of that obviously is all the materials you need to manufacture the things that make our energy, and then manufacture other things where we're consuming that energy. It's fundamental. And so, we'll certainly keep coming back to this. Before I move on, I do want to thank you. I'm a fan of sensible immigration. Obviously, that's another big, huge topic of great emotional weight right now. But I always say, the immigrants we should be welcoming with open arms are people like you who come here and they not only want to make a better life for themselves, but they want to contribute to society. And number one, what you do in the business world says a lot about what you're all about when it comes to being that active and contributing member of the American society. But then signing up for the Marine Corps, I mean, that's going a little above and beyond. Thank you for your service. Thanks for coming here and making what was already a great nation that much greater.
My citizenship of through service is something I'm very proud of, but at the same time, I am very proud of I see myself as someone that has 2 cultures. I have my Greek culture and I have my American culture. I get to pick from both of them the best, so to speak. But I can honestly tell you that in America, I was given opportunities that I was not given in Europe. In Europe, it's a lot about who you know, your connections. While America, I just felt that I was just given a chance and run with it. So I'm excited to be back. It definitely is not the same country that I left in 2010, but at the same time, I do see the humanity and the things that I didn't see so much in Europe, even though they're not in the scale that they were before. So. Right. Thank you for mentioning this. It was my honor, and I enjoyed it. Yeah,
good deal. And in the meantime, after you've gone through all that stuff, you get into this metals world, and like you said before we got on here, it's really just been a few years, and yet I look to you as a true expert on the metals front. You've been right there in the thick of things, doing the on the ground metals procurement, and who's going to learn faster than someone who's responsible for getting those critical materials for what we talked about earlier. So if you put on that metals guru hat, that metals supply chain hat, right now, if you think about like the top 2 or 3 things, what should people in manufacturing be aware of in the metal supply situation right now?
Okay. Well, before I hone in on supply chain, obviously, be it with gold, dollar, Bitcoin, things are having an upwards trend. There's definitely a potential talk of commodity super cycle. I cannot tell you that what is happening right now with copper is so fundamentally. If we're to look at the price first, so that particular cost. While there's definitely reasons for copper to be in the price range that it is right now, I still think that the heavy demand, the heavy consumption right this moment is not there. But any single bad news in supply side can tip that scale immediately, and the choo-choo train continues to go how it goes. So price-wise, I think that there's people that are beating the drums because it's not viable for a mining company to start a new mine, invest in new mines, unless the copper price is around in the $12,000 range. Having said that, now on the supply chain of the house, if you were to look at right this second, and metals are no different than other commodities or stuff that we buy. You're talking in a situation where the Panama Canal is dry and underperforming. Some people will say climate change. Some people will say El Nino year. Whatever the case may be, it's underperforming. The Suez Canal is forcibly out of the equation for the most part because of the situation with the Houthis. That diverts all the traffic to through Africa, and now vessels that were not going to do any business in Africa are forced to stop there to do crew changes, to get bunkers, to get provisions. So now, where a huge part of the global supply chain of metals and copper in particular, for example, has been Africa, it's bogged down. Okay, yep. And when should we talk more about America's independence in this, and how, despite the huge infrastructural investments that have been done, both by the Chinese and the Americans in the copper belt, which is the DRC Zambia area, you still have this problem right now. So a lot of people are not getting their metal on time. That has impacted really both Europe and some of the Asian customers. Yeah. So that's one impact that is important right now. A second one, again in the metals world, and that mainly in aluminium, but also in copper. Since the start of the war, or the Ukraine-Russia war, the Russian material has been kind of filtering through the system, winding up in China through the LME, through while self-sanctioned taboo in the beginning of the war, the last couple of years that went away. Now, since the 13th, I believe, of April this month, the CME and the LME are no longer accepting Russian material that has been produced after the 13th of April for US and UK individuals. Now, nature always finds a way. There's already talks of how that material can still end up in consumption, but this can also have a very big impact both on the accessibility of, when you look at exchanges as the buyer and seller of last resort, and the buyer seller of last resort has X, but out of that X, this is on sanction now and no one can touch it. You're talking about a few days worth of copper in the LME warehouses, or, again, these are very dynamic things that can change, but I would say these are two main things that are happening right now. And to your point, China is not really, there's definitely an increase and things are looking better, even though I'm not quite sure what sector of theirs is all this material winding up to, because their real estate is hurting. But copper in particular has been resilient the last 2 years, despite the uncertainties in interest rates and the dollar strength, all these different things, copper moves sideways. So now copper is showing its potential along with other metals as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this winds up. But as far as the manufacturers out there, they definitely need to understand that they're in a very dynamic price environment, and which hopefully by hedging their purchases or sales, they can mitigate that. And the other one is that the supply chains are not steady right now, and out of the availability of the available stock out there, there's Russian material that they no longer can use, especially in the US.
Well, and your point about, things being so kind of off kilter, there's so many different facets that play into the pricing situation. But if I go back to that article that we worked on a year or so ago, that was at a time when prices for copper were still pretty low. And yet both you and Craig Hutton, who's been in the business for years and years and years, were very confident in your prediction that copper was going to be increasing in price and decreasing in availability. And now we're starting to see kind of the front end of that. And a lot of people who were poo-pooing that notion a year ago are getting real quiet, because it's not even a worst case scenario yet. By now we were supposed to have been farther along on electrifying everything. And that's kind of hit some skids when it comes to EV demand and all that. We were supposed to see China, brilliantly resurgent. And as you said, their property debacle and so many other factors have hampered their growth and their progress. There's still some kind of dragging factors that are keeping copper and other metals from really taking off. And yet you were right on track with your prediction. And I just, I want to reinforce that point you made, that there are these things hanging out there, whether it's a disruption in mining or a further disruption in transportation. We haven't touched, and we need to talk about it, is the whole, surge in demand for materials for these data centers and for just electric infrastructure. All of that stuff can lead to a spike in these prices, right?
Look, a good example of how evident is the issue now to those that matter, which is the producers. And we talked about that before we went live. BHP, one of the biggest producers of miners, they mine anything from iron, copper, coal, massive company, huge copper assets globally in Australia and Latin America. Just this week, they made a bid offer to Anglo American, a company that's been around for 170 years, for 30 or 31 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Which of course Anglo has declined. They wanted a certain. Anglo American has the De Beers diamonds. They have other assets in Africa. They were talking the non-South African assets, which means the copper assets. And what many excellent writers out there in both Financial Times, Reuters, the Bloomberg, the metal teams are people with great sources and really good understanding of how this world works. And they made a point that it is cheaper for a company like BHP to go buy a competitor that already has the assets than pour in tens of billions of dollars for assets that will not be able to produce for another 10, 15 years because of red tape. So in the corporate world, you have people recognizing that there's not enough copper, that the price of copper, BHP can do the math. If the price of copper was to be at $20,000 per metric ton, them paying today's prices for an investment that in 10, 15 years can give them, double the price is a no-brainer. But we right now, and I want to kind of maybe tie this into what our article said back when with the United States. We are looking at a situation where earlier this year, one of the biggest mines in Panama of quantum minerals, accounting for 1% of global production, was closed because the government of Panama said, we don't want this. The people said no, the government said no, and this is a done deal. And actually, right now they're going to a global court for I think 20 billion or something like that, some insane amount that the Canadians are going to try to get after that. So while you don't have the dependency that you have in oil, if you were to consider the Middle East one of the hottest beds of anywhere in the world, and we're counting on our oil and gas from that area, mining is a lot different, but huge concentrations are in Africa, in Latin America. You would consider Latin American countries, Chile, one of the largest producer, Peru, fine and dandy, everything is great. But at the same time, we are progressively living in a world where lines are drawn and access, when you're dependent on your not necessarily your enemy, but somebody that does business with your enemy to get something, things get very interesting. I think that the United States reacted in the case of Africa, even though we have gone there strongly and we have poured all sorts of billions of dollars. Africa still is having problems, even despite that money that's poured in there. So even giving the Africans the benefit of the doubt that they're getting it, that they know that this is their a way for the African continent to flourish and progress is by taking advantage the right way of the blessed underground they're sitting on. So there's definitely a shift to that. But apart from copper, to the really rare earths where your defense is built on, your chips are built on, all those different things, we are in such a bad shape. So it seems like we haven't learned our lesson from oil. I wasn't in America in the 70s, but you had a problem in the 70s with oil.
Oh yeah.
We rectified that issue. Yes, maybe fracking is not the most environmentally friendly, but whatever the case may be, we were at one point we were energy independent. We are not now. Now we say, okay, we don't want bad fossil fuels. Great, let's protect the environment. No fossil fuels. If we can't have fossil fuels, that means that we have to mine. Oh, you can mine. Well, it doesn't grow on trees. And there's countries that have strategic plan. I hate to say it, but China's strategy on metals and all the commodities in particular has been way ahead of ours. We're just reactive. Yesterday I saw them announcing the new funding, $25 billion worth of funding for rare earths. But once I dove into the website, they're guaranteed loans with huge repayment. I mean, if our idea of doing something about it is having another angle for certain people to make money, we're not going to get anywhere, and we're going to find ourselves. I mean, if a $100 billion company like BHP is buying somebody, it wants to invest $31 billion because it sees something in 10 years, then the government of the United States, with its trillions and trillions of dollars worth of budget, should be making sure that no stone is unturned in terms of, there's so many projects out there, Jim, that got stopped for one reason or another, not enough funding. The problem, we should take advantage of all that. I think that mining has come a long way. And one quick parenthesis, which I should have added that in the introduction, but I always remember it. My wife's father's family, there were miners in Butte, Montana. Those areas up there are super fun sites because of like the horrible job that mining companies did back then, because they were just pumping out concentrate. Mining has come a long way. The way that the companies are operating right now is light years ahead of what it used to be. They understand that they're a part of the solution when it comes to protecting the environment and making sure that we take care of the earth, because we have to take care of the earth. No, the fact that we're pro mining doesn't mean that we're against the environment. And the fact that I personally feel that we should be drilling in every possible way we can for minerals doesn't mean that I don't respect other people's religions or importances of spaces. It's just that there's going to be a time that there's not going to be enough material to get around. Right now, as we speak, and no, we have enough refined copper, but as we speak right now, the treatment and refining charges are at discount, are level or discount, which means for a smelter, a global smelter right now, to turn your dirt into a copper cathode, they will do it for free or give you money instead of getting money from you, which means that we have more refining capacity than we have mining capacity. So it all goes back to mining. We can make all the refineries in the world, but we cannot guarantee ourselves that we're going to be able to buy concentrate from Latin America or from Asia or from anywhere else. We have to be able to do it in our own backyard. It's very important.
Well, so you've hit on a number of points. One goes to the central point of my article that you helped me with, was all about that if America is serious about its environmental direction, it has to get serious about mining. Now, that's not happening. The current administration, if anything, since that time has gotten more anti-mining. And, you just look left and right everywhere. There's a new mine proposed or an expansion. There's nothing but obstruction. And we're going backwards on doing our own supplying of our needs for these technologies. That it's the other frustrating thing. Environmentalists now want to employ things that are so much more resource intensive, and yet they don't want to have mining anywhere near us. It's just crazy. You made an excellent point about the responsible miners, the miners in the world that we live in with the environmental protection regulations have done amazing things with protecting the environment and making sure that the footprint of mining is minimized. And yet, what are we doing? We're making sure that the countries that are most advanced in those protections are not doing any mining anymore. It's getting pushed off to the countries that have no protections whatsoever. So the effect on the earth is a net negative. And here the environmentalists are patting themselves on the back for blocking mines in the developed world. It's insanity.
It is. And you know what's interesting and painful at the same time is and because we're talking about what an administration can do, but it's not just the funding and the policy, how receptive they are to policy, but there's a huge skill gap in mining. And right now, if you go into any of the big miners, you can go to Freeport's website, you can go to Rio Tinto's website that they have mining projects in Arizona, Barrick Gold, any of those companies, you go in there and you look at the mining positions, there's 20 and 30 and 40 per company, and they have been there for ages and ages. And it's a shame because we're not talking about Pennsylvania coal mining conditions and stuff anymore. The technology, we mentioned BHP before. BHP can track the carbon of the footprint from the minute that the dirt has been mined to the copper cathode, and the robotics that they're using. So high tech jobs, very well paying jobs that are just sitting there vacant just because. The universities haven't really pushed for it. The government hasn't pushed the universities to have curriculums for that. So it's left to companies,
the opposite.
The opposite, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's left to companies to have internship programs where they get some. I think depending on their local geography, they're impacting their local area. But on a national scale, we're not doing any of that, and we should be.
Yeah. So there's a number of points made on things we should be doing different. So if you look at the US right now and think of the next few years and where you're seeing the metals situation going, and more specifically the copper situation, what are the top two or three things we as a country should be doing?
Well, definitely change. Look, the frustrating part is that and again, I no political affiliation. I'm a registered independent. I've always been. This is not this is not a left right. This is a right wrong in my book, and to see the messaging from the administration of look how much we're doing. Oh, we're going to like solve this problem, but in reality, that's not the case. You mentioned before that new projects are shut down. So I think there needs to be more support on all the big projects that with the big numbers that they can make a big difference. I mentioned earlier that because look, in the need for covering our needs, even in the case of copper, there's a huge component that goes into the recycling part. One of the things that makes copper so amazing is not just that it's malleable and the conductivity, but it's also that it's fully recyclable and it doesn't lose any of its properties. So I think we need to have a kind of like a national, I don't want to say strategy, but we need to help education on the front end, investments on mining, on small mine sites that should be, they're just right there to start producing, but we can't for whatever reason. And then letting the bigger mines with the strictest and stringiest of rules to approve or not approve, but not based on what's going to get me elected on the next elections. I mean, this is critical. This is critical. Some people say, I don't want to sound dramatic. I remember reading something from somebody at Nestle that had said that one day there's going to be wars over water. And I'm like, there's going to be wars over concentrate a lot sooner than there's going to be wars over water. So I think that we have the capability to do many, many things. I mean, I lived I grew up in Europe. I was there for 14 years. And in so many things we're light years ahead, and there's a reason why we're light years ahead is because we took advantage of this melting pot that we are as a society. We take the best and the brightest of every field and we put them in a room and we let them flourish. So I think that we should go beyond the politics and keeping people happy. And we should learn from the mistakes of the past. I mean, it took us a long time to learn our lesson with oil, and it looks like while the intent is there, but the result and the determination is not there.
Yeah, I think with our current ruling class, the intent really isn't there.
No, you're right. It isn't. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate.
So, two things to me that have got to come back to the forefront are, number one, cost versus benefit. We've gotten completely away from justifying things from an economic perspective. We're spending trillions of dollars on things that are going to make no reasonable impact on anything. It's just lining people's pockets. And then the other is national security, something we haven't really touched on. I've talked about quite a bit in the manufacturing front, and it's the same with mining. If we don't mine for ourselves, and it's not like we have to do 100%, but if we don't have that capability, and you mentioned it, we don't even have the skills anymore because we've so far gotten away from mining. If we don't have that and we go to war with a big power, where do we stand? It's an issue.
It's an issue.
Yep.
Definitely.
Anything else we should hit on from the metals perspective before we wrap up?
Well, look, I think while we mentioned a lot copper, I think that not to get into geopolitics, but I think we're kind of entering. Well, we're kind of entering a Cold War 2.0 of sorts.
Yep.
And because this Cold War 2.0 of sorts is having a China angle to it, and because the China angle to it, we have elections, we have potential tariffs that are announced. I think that, the debt and what the owners of our debt do with our debt is above my pay grade. But in terms of critical minerals, there has already been certain ones that are no longer going back and forth between China and us, and I foresee this becoming the issue as time goes by. So it is a matter of national security. If the things that you need to fight the people or defend from the people that you think are going to do something to you are made by those very same people, you got an issue. So I think it's I don't know. I mean, we're not all in the world of very rare minerals, but believe it or not, it's a space that we're also not covering our blind spot, and I think that it kind of all goes together. And I'm not saying pick up the phone and talk to your representative, but I mean as business owners or as manufacturers, we do have to apply pressure to the decision makers, and I mean even as regular citizens, we should apply. Let's servants of the people. This is what they don't do in Europe. I was trying to explain to everyone in Europe how it works over here, or at least should work, and I was getting like the weird looks. But no, I think your audience is very savvy, and I have learned a lot from listening to a lot of your guests and from your articles, and I think that there's so much potential in American manufacturing. Today I was reading how supply chains are now exposed to all these things. Maybe we should do something about it. In my opinion, since COVID, that we saw that we can lose manufacturing production and people getting welded into manufacturing facilities, that should have been an aha moment that we can really be, it's a trade-off. You have to have, we say in investing, we say you diversify. Yeah, you make some in China, you make somewhere which is friendly. You make some in America, somewhere near America. I mean, and I really hope that with the changing world that we live in, more manufacturing comes in these shores, because I think there is the capability to do wonders in this country.
Definitely. And we had Harry Moser with the Reshoring Initiative on a few episodes ago, and he's very bullish. He's saying he's seeing more reshoring and nearshoring occurring than he's ever seen before, which is great in the short term. But if we don't fix these longer term problems of energy and minerals and, turning the regulatory tsunami around, then that's all just going to lose its head of steam. So we got to start making some smart decisions. Now, what about you? What's next for you? Can we help you find that dream job you're looking for?
Well, look, I'm in contact with a couple of mining companies. I do want to stay in the metals space. While I think I can be very, very effective, and I'm very, very good on the consumer side, procuring raw materials or risk management of metals or copper. For the time being, I want to be close to that, to the value chain of the actual ore. I think this is where the difference is going to be made. But I will certainly anyone I can share my insight with. I'd be more than glad to, or exchange ideas. I'm always open, and I can also provide you some I guess you could say some slides to put in your show notes.
Sure.
Some of the things that we discussed today, because it's sometimes a chart can make the whole discussion more visual.
Yeah, definitely. Shoot those my way. I'll add them to the description. I'll put the link to the article we talked about a few times that you helped me with last year. I definitely am voting in favor of you sticking with this angle on employment. You've become my main go-to guy when it comes to metals in the minerals world. So I'd hate to lose that. And I appreciate we've kind of become friends through it all, which is an even greater blessing. So I thank you for all of that.
Well, you're a good American, Jim. I appreciate the fact that you believe in the capabilities of this country, and you just talk common sense. Ever since we started exchanging, I find you like a good old American guy, and your background and experience is you're trying to put your money where your mouth is when it comes to manufacturing and the work you've done with even up in Montana. So keep fighting the good fight. I think hopefully there's better days ahead for manufacturing ahead of us in the United States.
Let's hope. Yeah. Thanks for joining us today, Konstantin.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your time.
And of course, as always, thanks to you in the audience for being here. That's why we're here. We're airing new shows every Tuesday. So tune in. We'll keep making them. Konstantin brought us some really unique information that it's tough to find almost anywhere else. I can't promise that every guest is going to bring us stuff that is so both valuable and oftentimes difficult to find, but everything that we present here will be at least somewhat valuable. So tune in every Tuesday. We'll be here. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinoski. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.